given that we've both experienced and run professional doctorates and PhDs, we thought we'd do this video, didn't we? Because we get so many questions from students approaching us about helping them to make that choice between the two. I think the most common one we get asked is, why would I choose a PhD versus a professional doctorate?
It's so hard, isn't it, to try and describe. And I suppose one of the things that is really helpful to think about is the similarities before you then go into the differences.
Yeah.
And I see from both sides, when we see our students that are doing PhDs and professional doctorates, they have a real thirst for knowledge. You have to really want to learn, to progress, to embed yourself in the detail of the research, but also think about the big picture. So I think there's a similarity in the motivations that people have, aren't there?
Yeah, I think the real difference between the two in terms of your choice, though, is what you want to do after with it. I think with a PhD are much more suited to people that want their career in academia. And if that is your intention, you should choose a PhD. If, however, your intention is to combine an academic career with another career, or if your intention is to develop that knowledge, that thirst for knowledge into your role or into different career outside of that, then a professional doctorate might be your better choice.
Absolutely, and I think professional doctorates are super for people who have established careers that are really looking to take them to the next level and learn a little bit more about what works and why it works, so that they can take that into their practice.
Yeah. So given that professional doctorates are more likely for people who are in work and continue in work, how does the experience differ of actually going through this?
I think with a PhD journey, you tend to find a supervisor who has an expertise in your particular area that you're interested in, don't you? And you work towards your end game with your supervisor, and therefore your relationship is very, very much with that individual. Often within a department that has a good community of PhD students, but it's very much self-driven. I think, and that's very different to the professional doctorate programs, and certainly the ones that we run, where we have groups of students going through their journey at the same time, and I think they get a lot more support from developing their ideas at the same time and moving through their data collection and so on. Do you say?
I think that's right. So I think that the prevailing difference in the experiences with a professional doctorate, you're much more likely to have that feeling of peer support, or that feeling that you have gone through something together, much more like you would get in a traditional master's program, for instance, than you would with a PhD, where you'd say, I went through this.
And what about the end result? How would you describe the end result being different or similar?
So really importantly, the end result for both is a doctorate. We get asked a lot, don't we, whether people doing professional doctorates don't think that they would end up as a doctor. Both are doctorates, so both give you the title of doctor. In terms of what you actually deliver at the end, with a PhD we'd be looking at a thesis. We'd be looking at a thesis for both, to be honest, but in a PhD, that thesis, regardless of what topic you're doing or what discipline you're in, it would be a thesis that would be made up of a number of chapters and a number of studies in there. With a professional doctorate, you would have a thesis. Sometimes that thesis is shorter than a PhD, because with a professional doctorate you're often able to take into account existing qualifications or experience, and so have a bit shorter. But also that thesis isn't just written at the end. With a professional doctorate you'll often be writing as you go through, and it's a bit more structured than a PhD would be. So again, it's more akin to how you would have deliverables on a master's program, for instance. The difference being you then build that all together in the end and to make one story.
Exactly, and they both have vivas, don't they, at the end as well? So once you've submitted your thesis, you would then have a session where you sit down and are interviewed and need to defend your work, whether that is for the professional doctorate or the PhD.
So what would be your one bit of advice for people, whether they're going through PhD or a professional doctorate?
I think it would be to think really hard about what they want at the end, so why they're doing it, but also what kind of approach is going to best meet their needs, and whether they are very, very strong on independent work or whether they might enjoy a structured programme that they could draw from.
Yeah. And I think also my advice would be to be really realistic at the beginning. So to recognise that it is going to be hard, it is going to involve a lot of work, and so be really clear about whether you can manage that and whether you want to go through that. You need to have a huge level of self-motivation and drive and passion, I think, to take you through whatever route you go.
Absolutely.